Who's next for Anthony Joshua? I'm Teekosey, and this is with just 15 defeats. Hi guys, welcome to the show. I'm Teekosey, the host of With Just 15 Defeats. And on today's show, we're going to be discussing Anthony Joshua's comprehensive stoppage victory over Dominic Breazeale. So thanks for stopping by. I really appreciate you taking a few moments of your day to listen to my opinion on this fight. If you like the content, please remember to click the thumbs up button at the bottom. And also click the subscribe button if you're a new viewer. So, Anthony Joshua retains the IBF heavyweight title at the O2 Arena in London. Now, the fight was comprehensive, definitive, one-sided. And if you're a regular listener of the show, you know that when I go for the reviews, I like to go on a round-by-round breakdown to really get a flavour of what the fight was about. But in this case, because it was so one-sided, I don't think it's worth going round by round. And I think we'll just have an overview of the fight and the performance of Anthony Joshua. And Anthony Joshua bossed the fight from the very beginning. He was quicker, he was more accurate, he was in range, he was landing shots, and he was hurting Dominic Breazeale. Whereas Dominic Breazeale was out of range. He couldn't get his punches off. He was slow, he was ponderous, unimaginative. He didn't really have an answer. But it did last into the 7th round, which was positive from an Anthony Joshua perspective. Now, I'll tell you what annoyed me about the broadcast. So I watched it on Sky Box Office, and the commentary. What annoyed me about the commentary specifically was that within a round they were describing Dominic Breazeale as durable and gutsy. You're not durable if you're getting to the end of the first round. Doesn't matter who you're fighting. You're not durable on the basis of lasting 3 minutes of a fight. That's not durable. Could be gutsy, it's definitely not durable. But anyway, Dominic Breazeale was never in this fight. He landed a few punches, but his jab was completely off. He was never in range, and all he really had was wild swinging punches, which, if anything, all they were really doing was exerting more of his own energy that he didn't really have. Now in the second round, there was an instance where Anthony Joshua landed a few good shots. Dominic Breazeale did the chicken dance, nearly went over but didn't. Okay, but what's interesting about this was that the referee jumped in front of Anthony Joshua, prevented Anthony Joshua from continuing, but didn't really do anything else. And he wasted 3 or 4 seconds of that fight almost protecting Dominic Breazeale from any further damage. And I think if he was going to do that, he possibly should have given Breazeale a count or something, rather than just protect him from any further damage. He should have either counted or let Anthony Joshua go in. I think the problem we've got now is that Anthony Joshua has stopped so many guys in such brutal fashion that referees are going into Anthony Joshua's fights scared that he is going to seriously injure the opponent, and at any sniff of it, they're going to look to stop the fight. It's as simple as that. And I think that's kind of what happened. The referee was in two minds. He didn't quite know what to do. And in the end, he just gave Breazeale those couple of extra seconds. He managed to get through the round and continue. And then the fight was fairly comprehensive. He damaged eye. He was getting hit at will. Joshua was able to pop out the jab. And not only was he popping out the jab, his punches were so hard, so accurate, that even though Breazeale had a high guard, he was punching right through it, and he was still hurting him with his hands up. So let's just talk about what I said in the preview video of this fight. I mentioned three interesting factors which I believed would be the key to this fight, and would really give us an understanding of what would happen. And I think I was bang on the money, as I mentioned three things. I said that Dominic Breazeale allows his opponents in far too close. Despite his size, he allows his opponents in far too close and allows them to work. Now, against someone like Anthony Joshua, you don't want to do that, because he has so much power and he has so much accuracy. And that's what was happening. Anthony Joshua was allowed to get in when he wanted, rough him up, hit him and hurt him, and also hit him from range. Now, the second point that I made was that despite the fact that Breazeale allows his opponents into close on the defense, when he's on the offense, he's rarely in range of his opponent. And again, despite his size and dimensions, this is quite strange that he's out of range and unable to hit his opponent. And if you watch this fight, Breazeale threw a number of jabs, but 99% of them were nowhere near Joshua's face. Almost pointless. And you can only point this down to the fact that he had terrible movement, very, very slow and ponderous, and was never in range. So the third thing, and this is what I said, the only way that probably Breazeale can win this fight is to get under the skin of Anthony Joshua, in a similar way to Dillian Whyte attempted in their fight. Now, Breazeale attempted this. He attempted to get under the skin of Anthony Joshua, but he did it in a real weak manner at the end of each round. He was obviously talking to him and shouting something in the end of the rounds, and Joshua was just putting this to the side. It didn't faze him at all. So these kind of little mind games didn't help. Anthony Joshua kept on top of things. And what I noticed was the demeanor of the two guys at the start of the fight. Okay, Anthony Joshua was standing there and he was smirking. He was like arrogant and confident. He was cocky. He was looking across at his opponent, and he knew that he had his number. And to be fair to Dominic Breazeale, he looked confident. I think sometimes guys have gone into the ring with Anthony Joshua and they've not had the confidence. And that's obvious from the very beginning. And that is a very bad strategy. That's a very bad strategy. And just to compare to a MMA fight that I watched recently, which kind of picks up on this point perfectly. Now, just a few weeks ago, there was the middleweight UFC fight. Michael Bisping won the title, right? I know this is MMA, but this is a psychological point that I'm making. Now, at the start of that fight, he was the challenger. He was focused. He was up for it. You look across the cage to his opponent, Luke Rockhold, and he looked like he had something on his mind. He was not focused. You could see it. And I know we can look back and we can say that Mike Bisping won, knocked him out, whatever. But if you look at the demeanor of Rockhold, he had something on his mind. He wasn't focused, and he ended up getting stopped. And that's a dangerous mentality going into a fight. When you're not focused, you don't appreciate the danger of your opponent or the belief in your own ability. So, going back to this fight, what are the positives that we can take out of it for Anthony Joshua moving forward? Because that's what we've got to do, right? First of all, he got rounds under his belt. Very, very important for Anthony Joshua, because we know over the years he's been stopping people in devastating fashion. Many of his fights have not really gone that long at all. And in fact, I'm just looking at his record. In 17 fights, he's only had 41 rounds. Okay, so he does not have a lot of rounds under his belt. So getting this extra 7 in this matchup was incredibly important. It's a shame that not a lot was coming back, so Anthony Joshua was able to just consider his offense. But to be honest, I think that despite what I said about Dominic Breazeale's inabilities, the movement of Joshua looks a little bit better in this fight. He was quick on his feet. He was moving in and out, and that is definitely a benefit, because in some of the fights, Joshua's movement has been pretty stiff. So that's pretty good. And as I say, his punches were crisp, accurate, and fast, and that can only be a benefit. So the next point to make is the IBF rankings, and they brought this up in the coverage of the fight. And what surprised me more than anything was that David Haye is ranked 3rd in the IBF rankings. How is that possible, considering the opponents that he's fought in the last couple of years? He's 3rd in the rankings. Absolutely incredible. So we talk about the potential opponents that Anthony Joshua has next. And his mandatory opponent is Joseph Parker. I'm not convinced that fight is going to happen next. And I've said in other videos that I don't think Joseph Parker should be going in for a title fight just yet. I think he needs more time, and I want him to have more time to continue to get experience himself in fighting top level guys. Because obviously in his last fight, Parker stepped up against Takem. Really interesting fight, real good learning fight. But I think he needs more, instead of being pushed in front of someone like Anthony Joshua. And I think Anthony Joshua needs more learning fights as well. But you look at the actual IBF list here, you've got Parker, Pulev, Haye, Duhaupas, Andy Ruiz, Takem, Glazkov, Molina, Breazeale, and Martin. I think Duhaupas would be an excellent learning fight for Joshua. Very durable, decent level opponent. Recently got a good victory, so he's back in the picture. I think it would be a good fight, but we know that it would probably be a hard sell for Eddie Hearn in the UK as a pay-per-view fight. So I would suggest that, whilst I wouldn't mind seeing a David Haye fight, I would not mind seeing that. I think David Haye's probably got his hands full with his heyday situation in terms of Shannon Briggs and Tony Bellew. He can see the pound notes there, and I think he's probably going to go down that route and hope that Joshua's still in the picture, probably this time next year, or probably later, late 2017, which could be dangerous for him, because I think that the David Haye-Anthony Joshua fight is a good fight for David Haye if David Haye is 100%, because he has undoubted skills. David Haye, he has some of the best natural ability on the scene, and if he's 100%, he's going to cause Anthony Joshua problems, and it has the makings of a super fight, and a fight that would sell, and a fight that people would want to see. And because of the Haye's age and his speed will be deteriorating day by day, I'd hope that they try and make the fight earlier rather than later. But who knows that? But I think it's possible that we could see either, in terms of Anthony Joshua's next fight, either a rematch with Dillian Whyte, and I think that's one of the reasons why Whyte was on the undercard on this. He had a comprehensive win against a pretty small guy, and a pretty one-sided, pointless fight that was thrown together last minute. I think they wanted someone decent to try and start rewriting this rematch, but it didn't quite work. I think Dillian Whyte's got another fight lined up in a couple of weeks, next month or something, so maybe they'll be able to kind of start putting that into action. And I could see that happening because they can tell a story there, and they can definitely sell it on a pay-per-view. The second opponent is possibly David Price. Yeah, David Price hasn't really done much, but he's been talking his way into it. And I think David Price versus Anthony Joshua, it's a decent fight. It's a definitive knockout win for Anthony Joshua. But the facts are that David Price, he can do damage himself. So we just have to see the way it goes. But we saw a decent scrap. We saw a Dominic Breazeale who gave Anthony Joshua rounds. I think it was a decent fight for this level. You got to remember that Anthony Joshua was only 16-0, Breazeale 17-0, and they were at the same level. The problem was that this was a world title fight. There's no world title involved. This would have been seen as a decent fight, a decent learning fight, and then it went on to be it was an okay fight, and Joshua learnt a little bit from it. He got another stoppage and continues that 100% stoppage ratio, and we're just going to have to wait and see where he goes from here. So I've been Teekosey, and this has been with just 15 defeats.